Almost 5 years ago, on the eve of England facing Spain in the final of the 2017 FIFA Under-17 World Cup, during what had been a fantastic year for England's youth teams, I made a video picking out who I felt were England's 7 most talented youth team players at that time. Here is a quick clip from the introduction. I'll put a filter on it so that you know which one's which when I'm flicking between the two.
England Under-17s will take on Spain Under-17s tomorrow afternoon in the final of the Under-17s World Cup. Victory for the Young Lions will be another high point in what has been a sensational year for England's youth teams overall.
Whoa, alright, why are you shouting, my man? These fine HITC Sevens OGs have just sat down to watch a relaxing video, and you're greeting them like a Nazi Waffen SS officer whipping his troops into shape. Christ almighty. I don't think that I needed the filter on reflection. You can just assume that it is 2022 Alfie, when I sound like this, and 1944 Reichsmarschall Alfred von Ribbentrop when I start shouting like the great Carly has just stood on my big toe whilst wearing rugby boots. Right, I will go back to Shouty Alfie from 2017 just to explain the criteria.
This 7 is made up only of players who've represented England at under-17 to under-20 level this year, as most of the under-21s are already established players.
Well, that made sense, I suppose. It would have been a bit easy picking out the likes of Jack Grealish, Tammy Abraham, and James Ward-Prowse. I should say, just to cover my own tracks before we begin, that whenever people revisit these types of videos or articles, the author of them tends to end up looking like an idiot. An awful lot can happen in football in the space of 5 years, particularly when you're dealing with 16 and 17-year-olds, so, just cut me a bit of slack in the comments. Or don't, it is up to you, I suppose. Just be warned that Shouty Alfie might haunt you in your dreams if you are too rude. Anyway, we'll take a look at the 7 that I picked out, see how they have got on in the last 5 years, whether I am Mystic Meg or a total fraud, and then take a look at who from that age group, with England, really has enjoyed great success since then that perhaps I overlooked. Without further ado then, here are, or were, my
7 most talented England youth internationals. TASHAN Oakley-Booth.
Alright, I know perfectly well what about 87% of you are thinking right now. Who? Well, allow 2017 Alfie to explain.
A central midfielder who's represented England under 16, 17 and 18 level, TASHAN Oakley-Booth made his Tottenham debut as a replacement for Dele Alli in the League Cup last month.
Yeah, him. He might not be a household name just yet, but Oakley-Booth looked like a serious player on the handful of occasions that I saw him in action for England, and I wasn't alone in being impressed. Don't just take my word for it though, take it from his former boss Maurizio Pochettino, or more accurately, Maurizio Pochettino, channeled through the medium of me 5 years ago.
A well-rounded midfielder, Maurizio Pochettino was reportedly wary about strengthening his central midfield over the summer as he wanted to give more opportunities to Oakley-Booth at some stage.
Yeah, so Poch never did that. It turned out the real reason was just that Daniel Levy wouldn't give him any cash. Or, well, rather, he wouldn't give him any more cash after he'd already spunked £23 million on Serge Aurier and almost double that on Davinson Sanchez that summer. Oakley-Booth had made 1 appearance for Tottenham when I made that video, having come off the bench for Spurs against Stoke in the EFL Cup, and that would prove to be his 1 and only appearance in a Tottenham Hotspur shirt. In January 2020, Oakley-Booth joined Stoke City for an undisclosed fee, where he made his debut in a 5-1 win against my team Hull City, which really is no way of repaying the faith of me including him in my 7 most talented England youth internationals in 2017, is it? I honestly still quite like Oakley-Booth, even though most of you probably have never heard of him, and like plenty of Stoke City fans, I'm not quite sure why he hasn't played more games, or at least had more game time, coming off the bench. The 22-year-old has played 23 times for the Potters in total, but having turned down a loan move to Burton Albion in January, he is yet to make a single first-team appearance so far this season. Next.
Joel LATIBEAUDIERE.
Yeah, alright, there's still a few blank faces out there, I can tell. I promise you that I got some right, and I wouldn't even be all that confident in writing off Joel LATIBEAUDIERE just yet, if I were you. Maybe I can make predictions about all of these players again, and we will return to this video in 5 years' time. Just kidding. Most of us will have died in a massive nuclear apocalypse by then, and the surviving few living in a Mad Max-style dystopia will have little interest in the fate of the 7 players who I picked out as being England's most talented youngsters back in 2017, supposing that they even have any internet connectivity at all. Where were we? Oh yeah, Joel LATIBEAUDIERE. I quite like him. Here's a little bit of what I had to say 5 years ago.
Man City have spent some serious money trying to find dependable centre-halves, so perhaps LATIBEAUDIERE will save them a few quid in a couple of years' time.
He didn't. He really didn't. He didn't even play a single game for the club, and Manchester City then went out and signed Aymeric Laporte for £57 million, Nathan Ake for £41 million, and Ruben Dias for £65 million. So yeah, lol at me. Couldn't really have been much more wrong about that one. In my defence, I did caveat it by saying perhaps he could save them a few quid. That can be my get out of jail free card on that one. LATIBEAUDIERE went on loan to FC Twente in the 2019-20 season before signing for Swansea City on a permanent basis in the summer of 2020. He only made 10 appearances in all competitions during his debut campaign, but so far this season, LATIBEAUDIERE has played 25 games, and he has just enjoyed his best couple of weeks in a Swansea City shirt, keeping successive clean sheets and looking absolutely rock solid in a back three in victories over Millwall and Swansea's bitter South Wales rivals, Cardiff City. If he can build upon his most recent form for the club over the next couple of seasons, and I think he is capable of doing just that, I think there is every chance that he will eventually play in the Premier League, whether that is at the Liberty Stadium or elsewhere. A senior England cap seems like a longer shot, but he is still only 22. At his age, Harry Maguire couldn't get a game for Hull City under Steve Bruce and had to go on loan to Wigan Athletic in the Championship. He has now won 42 caps for England and captains Manchester United. So, chin up, Joel.
Angel Gomes.
I would be willing to bet that most of you have heard of Angel Gomes, and that was already the case for a lot of people, even in 2017. Gomes had won the Jimmy Murphy Player of the Year award at Manchester United the previous season, becoming the youngest player ever to be awarded with that accolade, and he also made his Manchester United debut in the Premier League at the age of only 16, replacing Wayne Rooney in the 88th minute of a game against Crystal Palace to simultaneously become Manchester United's youngest ever debutant, breaking Duncan Edwards' record set in 1953, and the first player born during the 2000s to appear in the Premier League. In fact, Gomes' reputation was such that lots of comments, I suspect predominantly from Manchester United fans, scorned me for only putting him in 5th. Top 3 at a minimum, a lot of comments read, if not first, and some didn't agree with me casting doubt on the idea that Gomes was like a combination of Paul Scholes and Ronaldinho. In their defence, Gomes did look excellent at that age, and is indeed a very gifted player still, who often looks incredibly elegant and composed with a ball at his feet. Gomes only ended up playing 10 times for Manchester United though, as he became embroiled in a contract dispute with the club, refusing to sign a new deal. Gomes claimed that it was due to a lack of game time. Others suspected that it might have had more to do with money. In the end, Gomes said thanks but no thanks and signed for Lille in the summer of 2020 instead. Following an impressive campaign on loan at Boa Vista in Portugal last season, the diminutive 21-year-old has played 24 times for the reigning French champions so far this season, and I suspect he still has a bright future ahead of him in the game. Even a return to the England fold at some point would not come as an enormous surprise, though competition for places as a number 10 or on the left flank are now incredibly strong within Gareth Southgate's squad.
RHIAN SESSEGNON.
I said back in 2017 that I was leaving out under-21 internationals since they were already fairly established players for their clubs, whereas most players in England's other age groups were yet to even make their first-team debuts. RHIAN SESSEGNON was very much the exception to that rule, having already played 30 times for Fulham the previous season during his breakout campaign. As I said at the time though,
it's no coincidence that the one player playing outside of a top flight in this 7 is the one gaining the most experience. Having said that, Sessegnon may not be at Fulham for long, with the Londoners already having faced a battle to keep a hold of their talented left-sided teenager, with interest from Tottenham, Manchester United, Manchester City and Borussia Dortmund.
Well, that might be about as close as we have come to an accurate comment so far, and Sessegnon did indeed end up signing for Tottenham, though it wasn't until the summer of 2019, by which time he had already played 120 games for Fulham. Sessegnon set Spurs back £25 million, plus Josh Onomah, who headed in the opposite direction. Onomah, interestingly enough, at least if I am remembering correctly, made my shortlist for that video in 2017, but just missed out. He is still at Fulham, in case you were wondering, where he has played 20 times this season. That is slightly more games than RHIAN Sessegnon has played so far this season at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, the 21-year-old having racked up 16 appearances in total, most of them coming at left wing-back following Antonio Conte's appointment before he suffered a hamstring injury. Sessegnon is yet to win a cap for England's senior team, but there is a potential opening at left-back where England certainly have less depth than they do at right-back if he can nail down a starting berth at Tottenham at some stage.
Ryan Brewster.
Who?
Ryan Brewster.
Who?
Ryan Brewster.
Sorry, just one more time if you could.
Ryan Brewster.
I'm pretty sure that it's RHIAN, mate. Anyhow, RHIAN Brewster, or Ryan as his closest friends know him, was among the most obvious inclusions in my 7 back in 2017, having already scored 7 goals in only 6 games at the Under-17 World Cup. He added an 8th in the final to take the tournament's golden boot with some breathing space ahead of Lassen and Dye and Abel Ruiz, the latter of whom is now a full Spanish international who plays for Braga with 2 caps to his name. Though interestingly, Barcelona did insert a buyback clause into his deal when they sold him. Brewster, on the other hand, has not won a senior cap yet, or even come particularly close to doing so. He played 4 games for Liverpool, none of which came in the Premier League, and he missed the losing penalty against Arsenal in the 2020 Community Shield at Wembley. Not long after that, Brewster was sold by Liverpool for a reported £23.5 million to Sheffield United. In 30 games at Bramall Lane last season, in a Sheffield United team that suffered from a diabolical case of second season syndrome, Brewster failed to score a single goal. You suspected that things would be different for him in the Championship, where Brewster once scored prolifically on loan at Swansea in his teens, but it hasn't really turned out that way. Admittedly, Brewster has been sidelined with a hamstring injury since the back end of January, but he only scored 4 goals in 16 games this season prior to that. I still think that Brewster is a very talented first-time finisher, who is certainly capable of scoring a hatful of goals in the Championship with the right service and a bit of confidence back in him. So yeah, good luck Ryan, all the best for the future.
Phil Foden.
I'm just going to play the whole Phil Foden clip from 2017 for this one because it's not very long and I found it interesting.
England's standout player at the Under-17s World Cup and one of the most exciting prospects the country has produced in a long time. We can only cross our fingers and hope Phil Foden is developed in the right way at Manchester City. One thing England have lacked for so many years, arguably going back as far as Paul Gascoigne, is a really talented ball player with the confidence to commit and beat players at will. Foden has that confidence with the ball at his feet. He's a tricky customer and the driving force in this England side. Capable of playing through the middle or on either flank, Foden seems to share a good relationship with Pep Guardiola, so hopefully we'll see him getting some game time in the not too distant future.
Alright, so you haven't heard of TASHAN Oakley-Booth, and he can't get a game at Stoke. But I wasn't too far wrong with that one, was I? I can pretty vividly remember actually making that video and umming and ahhing about whether to put Foden in second or first. I ought to have put him first, since I think he is the most unique talent to come through England's youth ranks over the last 10 years, and he has the potential to become the best England player of my lifetime at least. Euro 2020 wasn't quite his tournament, off the back of a sensational season at Man City, as he came in with a bit of a niggling injury and failed to make an impression in the opening 2 games of the tournament. Then he lost his place to Bukayo Saka, and he would not regain it. But I think that it is evident to everyone now, including Gareth Southgate, that Foden has to start for England, whatever his position, and rather conveniently, he looks brilliant playing anywhere from central midfield all the way up to playing as a false 9. It is worth noting that Foden hadn't actually made his first team debut when that video came out, meaning that he hadn't played a single minute of men's football. I said at the time that it seemed like he had a good relationship with Pep, and so it proved. Foden has now played 159 games in the Citizens' first team, scoring 42 goals and making 31 assists. And I still think that he brings something to the England team that we haven't had for decades in terms of his ability, positivity, and sheer willingness to attempt and indeed pull off the spectacular, whether that be a long mazy run, an improvised finish, or an unimaginable defence-splitting through ball.
Jadon Sancho.
Oh, go on then. I'll give you the full clip for this one as well, seeing as though it's short and none of you asked for it.
Jadon Sancho is one of the brightest prospects, not just in English, but in European football. The teenage wonderkid was very highly regarded at Manchester City, but chose to leave the club in the summer to join Borussia Dortmund. At 17, he became the first Englishman to join the German Giants. It was a big decision for such a young man, but he's certainly a club with a reputation for nurturing and giving opportunities to young players. A versatile footballer, Sancho is probably at his best on the left flank, where he loves to cut inside and shoot with his stronger right foot. The fact that he has been the subject of an £8 million move to Borussia Dortmund at 17, where he's been given Ousmane Dembele's number 7 shirt, probably tells you all you need to know about Jadon Sancho. Provided he gets his head down and concentrates on his football, he should be a future England international.
At the time that video came out, Jadon Sancho had played just 6 minutes of first-team football within the professional game, which came, as it happened, exactly 6 days before that video came out. During his debut campaign, Sancho played just 685 minutes of first-team football, spread out across 12 first-team appearances. Dortmund very much eased Sancho in that season, understandably, given that he was only 17 years old, but the following campaign was pretty special. Sancho played 43 games, scoring 13 goals and making 20 assists, during a season which he spent the vast majority of as an 18-year-old. He continued in a similar vein over the next 2 seasons before returning to England and returning to Manchester, but in a move to Manchester United rather than his former club, worth £73 million. I said I thought that was a bargain at the time, as much as spending £73 million on a footballer can ever be considered a bargain, but just as he did at Dortmund, Sancho has taken a little bit of time to settle in. He's shown signs of what may well be to come in recent weeks though, and Sancho has indeed become a full England international, capped 23 times, having just turned 22, albeit many of those caps have come off the bench. I think Phil Foden is better than him, arguably then and certainly now, but I would stand by my top 2, even if I got the order of them wrong, and despite all of the protestations about Angel Gomes only finishing 5th. That entire video was only 5 minutes and 42 seconds long. I really used to know how to pack a lot in, didn't I? None of this 30-plus minute documentary nonsense that I've got tied up in these days, where I can't seem to make a single video that's under 15 minutes long. That's probably why, back in 2017, I used to actually get some sleep, have some semblance of a social life, and my girlfriend wasn't always threatening to leave me. Yeah, alright, clever dicks. She would still sometimes do that, but she definitely didn't used to do it as often. In terms of players from those England youth team squads in 2017 that didn't make my 7 but perhaps have achieved more and reached a higher level than at least my first 2 inclusions and probably 5 of them, you've got the likes of Aaron Ramsdale, Reece James, Conor Gallagher, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Emil Smith-Rowe, Mason Mount, Trevor Chalobah, Ben Brereton, Lewis Cook, Fikayo Tomori, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Dominic Solanke, Dean Henderson, Kyle Walker-Peters, Ademola Lookman, Ezri Konsa, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Bloody impressive, actually, across just those 3 squads from a single country in a single year, when you think about it. Dip into the under-16s, and you could add Tino Livramento and recent Liverpool signing Fabio Carvalho into the mix, who has since switched his international allegiance to Portugal and began playing for Portugal's under-21s. If I were remaking my 7 based on the 7 best players from England's 2017 youth teams, other than the under-21s, seen as though absolutely no one asked, and ranking them based on their current ability or talent or how well they're playing, I think I would go with something like, from 7th to 1st, Fikayo Tomori, Conor Gallagher, Aaron Ramsdale, Mason Mount, Reece James, Jadon Sancho, and Phil Foden. But I haven't given that a great deal of thought, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin would have been a candidate for a top 5 spot before he got injured, and also I like Tino Livramento a lot. Either way, I think certainly only my top 2 from 2017 would remain, so we can say with some certainty that I am an idiot. But I think that they would still be my top 2, and Foden undoubtedly would be, which must mean at the very least that I'm not the biggest idiot on the face of the earth. That's what I'm going with anyway. Hey, who am I kidding? As long as this woman's alive, I'm definitely not the stupidest person on the planet. That is it for today's video. Thank you for joining me on this trip down memory lane, so for just one last time, take us away, unnecessarily loud and aggressive Alfie that doesn't sound anything like I ever remember sounding in real life.
So that's it for our top 7. Thankfully, the current England setup means there are loads more candidates, so leave your suggestions in the comments and let us know which England youngsters you're most excited about. Thanks for watching, give us a like if you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to subscribe to HITC Sevens.
Thanks 2017 Alfie, and you can now also follow me on Twitter and on Instagram via the username at HITC Sevens because since 2017, social media has been invented. Back then it was just AOL email and stick cricket, but they were simpler times, before smartphones, Oculus headsets and Molly May Hague. In many respects, I think we were happier back then, making the most of our 24 hours.